I never thought a slip of paper could hold so much power over my life. My name is Cassandra, though most people call me Cassie. I'm 34 years old, an ordinary woman with an ordinary job, and until recently an ordinary life filled with bills, long work hours, and quiet nights in my small Portland apartment. But on my birthday, everything changed. The lottery numbers I picked matched perfectly. $47 million. Just like that, the balance of my life tipped into something unimaginable. And yet, instead of joy, I felt fear because I knew one thing for certain: I would not tell my family. Not a word. That probably sounds strange, maybe even ungrateful. But you don't know my family the way I do. To them, money has never been just money. It's been a weapon, a chain, and sometimes a ticket to control. Growing up, I learned quickly that love in my family was conditional, often tied to what you could give rather than who you were. My parents divorced when I was 14. My father remarried a woman named Stephanie, who loved luxury as much as she loved reminding people of their shortcomings. My mother remarried too, to a man named Warren, who counted pennies like they were gold and never saw me as anything more than a nuisance. Then there were my siblings. Lisa, my younger sister, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She lived in her picture-perfect suburban house with her surgeon husband and two beautiful children. Everything about her life seemed shiny and flawless, and she carried it like a badge of honor. My older brother Jason, on the other hand, was charming but unreliable. He drifted from job to job, woman to woman, and borrowed money from everyone in the family, including me, without shame or repayment. I'd learned my lessons with them. I'd emptied savings to help Jason with rehab once, only to later find out he never went. I'd put thousands on my credit card for Lisa's wedding, a debt I was still carrying years later. And my father, I loaned him money for roof repairs, then saw pictures of him on vacation in Cancun weeks later. Every time I gave, I was left emptier, and every time I asked for understanding, I was met with excuses or silence. The only exception had ever been my Aunt Martha. She didn't have much. She was an elementary school teacher, living paycheck to paycheck, but she always gave what she could, whether it was her time, her old Honda to drive me to appointments, or just her presence when I felt most alone. Martha was the kind of person who showed up when it mattered, even if no one else did. So when I realized I held a winning lottery ticket worth millions, I thought of Martha first. But even then I kept silent. I spent the night pacing my apartment, reading horror stories about lottery winners whose lives crumbled after their secret got out. Families torn apart by greed, friends turning into enemies, people bankrupt within years. I decided right then I would claim the money, but I would tell no one. Not my parents, not Lisa, not Jason, not even Charlotte, my best friend who had been my one steady anchor since college. But silence is heavy. Pretending life hadn't changed while knowing I had more money than I'd ever dreamed of was a strange kind of prison. I started to wonder, if I really did need help, who in my family would be there for me? Would they give without knowing what I had hidden, or would their excuses prove everything I already feared? That's when the plan came to me. I would test them. I would tell each family member that I had lost my job, that I needed $5,000 to cover rent and medical bills until I found something new. Not a fortune, but enough to see who would sacrifice for me the way I had for them. The first call I made was to my mother. My voice shook as I told her the story I had crafted. She gasped and clucked in sympathy, but when I asked for help, she hesitated. Warren had just bought a lake house, she explained, and money was tight. Maybe I should ask my father or Lisa. She promised to see what she could do, but I knew that meant nothing. When I met my father for coffee, his face stayed cold as stone as I explained my fake crisis. He didn't offer money. Instead, he lectured me for 20 minutes about financial responsibility and saving 6 months' worth of expenses, as though life ever gave me the chance to save that much. His words cut deep, not because they were unexpected, but because they confirmed what I'd always known: my struggles were just lessons to him, not reasons to love me. Lisa was next, sitting in her pristine suburban kitchen surrounded by marble countertops and family portraits. She listened with wide eyes and genuine sympathy. For a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, she would help. But when I asked, she shifted, glancing away. They'd just bought a new Audi. The kids' tuition was due. The bathroom renovation had cost more than expected. Maybe she could talk to Paul about a smaller amount. Maybe I could move into their guest room, though it was currently used for storage. Her pity felt hollow, like a hand extended only halfway. Jason didn't even try. My text went unanswered, my calls ignored. This from the same brother who had begged me for thousands with promises he never kept. His silence hurt more than his lies ever did. Step-parents were harsher. Stephanie dismissed me with thinly veiled contempt, suggesting I learn financial management. Warren didn't even bother with niceties. He said flatly that I wasn't his daughter, and my problems weren't his to solve. By the end of that week, I felt hollowed out. One by one, they had failed me, all except one. Before I could even reach out to her, Martha called me. She had heard about my supposed job loss from my mother. She invited me to lunch, listened carefully, and then pressed an envelope into my hands, $3,000, nearly all she had. I tried to refuse, but she insisted, her eyes soft with love. "Family helps family," she said. And that's when the guilt began to gnaw at me. Because the truth was, she had helped me more than anyone else ever had, not knowing I was sitting on millions. I went home that night with Martha's envelope still tucked in my purse. It felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Every time I touched it, my chest tightened with guilt. This woman who had so little had given me nearly everything she had, while my family, who lived in comfort and security, had turned me away without hesitation. I couldn't sleep, replaying the moment her hand had pressed the money into mine, her voice soft but firm. Family helps family. I had wanted to cry out the truth right then, to confess that I didn't need her money, that I had more than enough to cover every bill she'd ever have. But fear kept me silent. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my untouched coffee, the truth pressed against me like a stone wall. My family had failed me not just once, but for years. They had proven through this test that I had never truly been loved unconditionally. And yet Martha had shown me love without hesitation, even when she could least afford it. The contrast was brutal. I decided to use part of my winnings to repay her in secret. I set up a trust in her name and funneled money into it, enough to cover her retirement, her medical expenses, and even a few luxuries she'd never allow herself. But I didn't tell her. Not yet. Part of me wanted to wait to reveal the truth at just the right time, so she'd understand how much her gesture had meant to me. Meanwhile, the silence around my supposed crisis was deafening. My mother texted me once asking if I had figured things out yet. Lisa called a week later, offering to let me babysit her kids for extra cash. My father didn't call at all. Jason predictably only texted when he needed money for himself, oblivious to the lie I had told him. But the weight of secrecy grew heavier. It wasn't just the lie about my finances anymore. It was the lie about the lottery. I walked through life pretending to be the same woman I'd been before, while in reality, I was worth more than anyone in my family combined. At work, I typed at my desk, smiled at coworkers, and packed my lunch like always, all the while knowing I could walk away at any moment. Yet I stayed because quitting would raise questions I wasn't ready to answer. One evening, I found myself at Lisa's house again. She'd invited me for dinner, though I knew it was mostly so she could show off her new appliances. As I sat at her glossy table, she and Paul spoke about their vacation plans in Paris, how expensive everything was, how much they sacrificed to maintain their lifestyle. I listened quietly, my mind burning. These were the people who couldn't spare a dime to help me when I supposedly needed it. And then Lisa said something that cut through me like glass. "You know, Cassie, maybe if you managed your life better, you wouldn't always be in such a bind." I wanted to laugh, scream, throw the truth in her face. Instead, I excused myself and went home, my hands trembling with rage. That night, for the first time, I considered not keeping the secret forever. Weeks passed, and the divide between me and my family grew sharper. They rarely called, and when they did, it was never to ask how I was, only what I could do for them. But one day, an opportunity appeared that I hadn't expected. My father invited me to a family dinner. I almost declined, but curiosity pulled me in. The night of the dinner, I walked into his house and saw everyone gathered: my parents, Lisa, and her perfect family. Jason lounging with his phone, Stephanie and Warren whispering in the corner. For a moment, I felt like I was 14 again, the invisible child sitting on the sidelines of her own life. Dinner began with the usual small talk, but soon my father cleared his throat. "We've been talking," he said, looking around the table. "And we think it's time we pool resources as a family. Things are expensive these days. Lisa and Paul have the kids' tuition, Jason needs help with his car, and we're looking at renovations. If we all pitch in, it will ease the burden." I blinked, stunned. They wanted me to contribute to the very people who had turned me away when I supposedly needed help. My father's eyes landed on me. "Cassie, you're single, no kids, steady job. You should be able to help the most." My blood boiled. I remembered Lisa's marble countertops, Jason's endless excuses, my step-parents' disdain. They had failed me when I begged, and now they wanted to lean on me without shame. I forced a smile and asked, "And what happens when I'm the one in need? Who helps me then?" Silence. Awkward glances. A cough from Jason. Then Lisa said, "You know we do what we can, Cassie, but really it's about family supporting each other." Her words echoed Martha's, but they rang hollow, empty of sacrifice. That was when I realized this was the moment. The test was over. I knew where their loyalties lay, and I was done pretending. I sat there at the table, my fork untouched, their voices rising around me like a storm. They spoke about contributions and responsibilities, about sacrifice and fairness, but every word was poisoned by hypocrisy. My chest burned with the weight of everything I hadn't said. My hands trembled under the table, clenched into fists. For so long, I had bitten my tongue, let their cruelty wash over me, accepted the role they had carved for me, the responsible one, the dependable one, the one they could take from without ever giving back. But that night, something inside me snapped. I placed my fork down gently and looked at them, really looked. At Lisa's polished smile, at Jason's careless slouch, at my father's cold eyes, at Stephanie's smirk and Warren's indifference. The people who were supposed to love me, protect me, stand beside me in my darkest hours. They hadn't just failed me, they had abandoned me. And suddenly I didn't feel like keeping secrets anymore. "You know what's funny?" I said. My voice calm, almost too calm. "A few weeks ago I told each of you I was desperate, that I couldn't pay my bills, that I needed help. Do you remember what you said?" There was silence. My father frowned. Stephanie shifted uncomfortably. Lisa glanced down at her plate. Jason looked up briefly, then shrugged. "Not one of you offered real help," I continued, my voice steady. "Not one, except Aunt Martha. She gave me nearly everything she had without hesitation. The rest of you, you told me no. You told me to figure it out. You told me it wasn't your problem." Jason chuckled nervously. "Come on, Cassie, don't be so dramatic." Dramatic. The word cut out of me like a blade. My voice shook now, but it wasn't from weakness. It was rage. "Do you know what I was really doing? I was testing you. I wanted to see if any of you would stand by me when I needed you. And you failed. Every single one." Their faces paled. My father leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening. "This isn't appropriate, Cassandra." "Oh, I think it is." I leaned forward, my voice dropping into a whisper sharp enough to slice through bone. "Because while you were turning me away, while you were lecturing me and mocking me, I was sitting on $47 million. The room went silent. Not a single breath, not a single sound. Just wide eyes and stunned faces staring at me like I had grown two heads. "I won the lottery," I said, letting the words sink in. "I won more money than all of you combined will ever see. And I chose not to tell you. Because I knew deep down, I knew this is exactly who you are. Selfish, greedy, conditional." Lisa's mouth dropped open. You're lying." I reached into my bag and pulled out a copy of the check, the official certificate with my name printed boldly across it. I laid it in the center of the table like a weapon. Their eyes locked on it, and the air grew thick with disbelief, envy, hunger. Jason was the first to speak, his voice eager, oily. "Cass, come on. You know I've always been there for you." "No." My voice was sharp, final. "You've never been there for me. Not once. Every time I helped you, it was a lie. Every promise you made was broken. You don't get to rewrite history now." Lisa tried next, her voice trembling. Cassie, we're family. You can't just shut us out. The kids. Palmy, we've always loved you. Loved me. I laughed bitter and cold. You loved what I could do for you. You loved my wallet. You loved my silence. But you never loved me. Not enough to help me when I begged. My father cleared his throat, his voice low, commanding. If this is true, Cassandra, then you have a responsibility to this family. We supported you when you were young. We raised you, gave you. I slammed my hand on the table, the sound echoing like thunder. You gave me nothing but wounds. You raised me to believe I was less to carry everyone else's weight to sacrifice until I was empty. Well, I'm not empty anymore. And I don't owe you a single thing. The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was fear. Fear of the truth. Fear of what I had become. Fear of losing what they never even had. I stood gathering my bag, my voice steady and cold. Do you know who I owe, Aunt Martha? The woman who gave me $3,000 she couldn't afford because she loved me. She will never want for anything again. The rest of you. You'll get nothing. Not a dime. You showed me who you are. And I believe you. Their voices rose as I walked toward the door, pleading, shouting, begging, but I didn't turn back. For the first time in my life, I didn't need their approval, their love, or their lies. I had everything I needed. But as the door closed behind me, I felt the weight of something else settle on my shoulders. Not grief, not guilt, but liberation. For the first time, I was free. I didn't sleep that night. Even after leaving my father's house, their voices still rang in my ears. Lisa's trembling pleas, Jason's desperate promises, my father's thunderous demands. But beneath it all, I felt an unexpected calm. For years I had lived in their shadow, chasing scraps of love, begging for acceptance that never came. Now I no longer needed them. And that truth was both terrifying and exhilarating. The very next morning the calls started. First from Lisa, then my mother, then Jason. Voicemails piled up, texts poured in. They shifted tones with dizzying speed, pleading, apologizing, threatening. Cassie, don't let anger destroy this family. You're being selfish after everything we've done for you. Think about the kids, Cass. And then finally, the ugliest one. If you don't share, we'll make sure everyone knows what you really are. I stared at my phone, shaking my head. They hadn't learned a thing. This wasn't about love or reconciliation. It was about greed, about control, about them scrambling to get their hands on something they thought belonged to them. So I made a choice. If they wanted war, I would give them war. But it wouldn't be with screaming matches or lawsuits. No. My revenge would be quiet, precise, undeniable. The first step was Martha. I drove to her small house with the trust documents in hand. She was sitting on her porch sipping tea, wearing the same cardigan she'd had for years. When I told her the truth that I had won the lottery, that I had tested the family, that she was the only one who had passed, her eyes filled with tears. "Cassie, sweetheart," she whispered, clutching my hands, "you don't owe me anything." I pressed the papers into her palm. "I do. You showed me what real family looks like. And because of that, you'll never have to worry again. This trust will take care of you for the rest of your life." She tried to refuse, but I wouldn't let her. When she finally broke down and hugged me, I felt something in my chest unclench. For the first time in weeks, I felt peace. But peace was temporary. The storm at home was just beginning. Within days, whispers spread through town. Someone, my guess was Lisa, had leaked the truth. Suddenly, neighbors I barely knew were knocking on my door with baked goods and thinly veiled requests. Old classmates reappeared in my inbox, reminiscing about how close we used to be. Even my boss called me into her office, her smile too wide, asking if I planned to continue working now that I was comfortable. And my family. They doubled down. Jason showed up at my apartment, unannounced, pounding on the door until I threatened to call the police. Lisa sent long, rambling emails about how much stress she and Paul were under, how their mortgage and tuition and lifestyle were crushing them. My father left me a voicemail saying he had consulted a lawyer that as my parent, he might be entitled to a share. It was almost laughable, almost. But then came the part that wasn't funny at all. Someone again I suspected Lisa tipped off a local reporter. One morning I woke up to see my name splashed across the news. Local Woman Wins Millions Family Claims Betrayal. The article painted me as a cold-hearted daughter who had abandoned her struggling relatives. Quotes from Lisa and Jason painted themselves as victims of my spite. My father, of course, declined to comment, though I knew that was only because he was plotting his next move. My chest burned as I read it. Not because I cared what strangers thought, but because it confirmed how little my family valued me. They didn't just want my money, they wanted to destroy me publicly if they couldn't have it. So I made my second move. If they wanted to expose me, I would expose them. Quietly, carefully, I reached out to a lawyer. I gathered receipts, texts, and emails, every debt Jason had never repaid, every cruel message Lisa had sent, every manipulation from my father. My lawyer helped me draft a statement that painted the full picture, not of a selfish millionaire, but of a woman who had given everything to her family only to be abandoned when she needed them. When I released it to the same reporter, the story flipped. Suddenly, I wasn't the villain. I was the daughter who had been used, the sister who had been taken advantage of, the woman who had risen despite betrayal. Public sympathy swung in my favor, and my family's phones went quiet. But victory didn't feel sweet, it felt hollow. Because no matter how much I won in the court of public opinion, the truth remained: my family was gone. Or maybe they had never truly been there to begin with. One night, as I lay awake in my apartment, the city lights flickering outside my window, I asked myself the hardest question of all. What now? I had wealth, security, freedom. But what good was it if the people I had once loved were nothing but ghosts of betrayal? The answer came slowly, but clearly. I would build my own family. Not through blood, but through choice. Through people like Martha who gave without expecting. Through friends who stood by me without condition. Through kindness, honesty, and trust, the things my birth family had never understood. And as for them, my silence would be the sharpest revenge. In the weeks that followed, I disappeared from their world. I changed my number, blocked their emails, even moved into a house on the edge of town, where the silence felt like a balm on my bruised spirit. For the first time in my life, my days belonged to me. No sudden calls demanding money, no passive-aggressive texts disguised as concern, just quiet mornings with coffee, long walks by the river, and the slow healing process of building a life that was mine alone. Martha came often. I loved watching her grow into her new life. She traded her old cardigan for dresses in bright colors, went on trips she had once only dreamed of, even enrolled in a painting class at the community center. She still insisted she hadn't earned any of it, but I reminded her every time, "You gave me something. Money can't buy proof that love doesn't ask for anything in return." With her by my side, I started to open myself to others again. I joined a volunteer group, met people who valued laughter over wealth, and slowly stitched together a circle that felt like home. They didn't know me as the girl who had been abandoned by her family or as the woman with millions in the bank. They just knew me as Cassie. And that was enough. But the scars remained. Some nights when the wind rattled my windows, I would wake with the memory of my father's voice demanding obedience, or Lisa's smug smile as she told me I should manage my life better. The past didn't vanish, it lingered sharp and unforgiving. Yet instead of letting it break me, I learned to let it remind me of what I would never allow again. Months later, I heard through the grapevine that Jason had been arrested for fraud, that Lisa and Paul were drowning in debt, that my father's health had worsened, and he had no one to care for him. Once that news might have crushed me with guilt. Once I would have rushed to their side, emptying myself to save them again. But this time I simply felt nothing. Their downfall wasn't my victory, and it wasn't my burden either. It was simply the weight of their choices finally settling where it belonged. The truth is, revenge didn't come in the form of lawsuits or headlines. It came in my refusal to play their game. It came in my silence, in my absence, in the fact that I chose joy and peace over their chaos. That was the real triumph. Their words no longer had power over me. Their betrayal no longer defined me. One evening, as Martha and I sat on my porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, she turned to me and said, "You know, sweetheart, sometimes the family you're born into isn't really your family. Sometimes it's the one you build along the way. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. She was right. My family wasn't the people who mocked me, abandoned me, or tried to leech off me. My family was her. My family was the friends I chose, the people who lifted me up, the people who reminded me I was enough. And maybe that was the lesson all along. We can't control who hurts us, but we can control who we allow back in. We can't erase betrayal, but we can decide whether it becomes our cage or our freedom. So if you're listening to this, if you've ever felt like the people who were supposed to love you the most were the ones who broke, you know this: you are not alone, and you are not powerless. Sometimes the greatest revenge is not fire or fury, but simply walking away and building a life so full, so bright, that their shadows can't touch it. That is what I chose. That is who I became. And for the first time in my life, I am free. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments if you've ever had to walk away from the people who were supposed to love you. Your voice matters.